Rusty, welcome back to Archers of Horror, episode 10.
I'm pumped to be back. We've been on a brief hiatus. I think it's been 2 weeks since we last recorded.
Life has been totally wild, but not as wild as our film today, Brain Damage, written and directed by Frank Henenlotter, who I have to confess I had no awareness of, and now I'm a huge fan of him.
I am such a huge fan of him. I feel like I know him after consuming.
I love him.
Will you be trying to get in touch with him to confess your feelings?
Well, we have heard that Arrow is doing a basket case release.
I'm so excited for that.
Season 2 of Archers of Horror, which is going to start after episode 15, we're going to have a few guests. So Frank would be a dream guest.
He really would be. I think it could happen, though. I'm going to say it right here. I think we could do it.
I think it could happen as well. And did you listen to the commentary?
I was in and out. I'll admit that I didn't listen to it in its entirety.
Really? Because I think you would like how Frank reminds me of us. Because he's like goes on tangents and then he just stops and he's like, what was I saying?
That sounds like me, if anything.
He drops his mic at one point and then he's like,
hear that part.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna hold it like this. And then like 10 minutes later, they're like, no, you have to hold it like that. And then a couple times he's just like, I can't do this. And like it'll come out of nowhere and the interviewer will be like, no, Frank, you sound fine. Just keep going.
Well, the interesting thing is he has like 40 years on us and he's behaving that way. We're in our 30s and we can't get our shit together. So we're doomed down the line.
When I am Frank's age, I'll look like King Tut.
Now, like
whatever that means.
That's like the way he described the ending of the film, whatever it means.
I just want to say that I love this movie.
My opinion, I vacillated on it at first. I didn't know what to think, and I kind of was just like, oh, why did I watch this? But I do really like it now.
Yeah,
and I feel like the more media I consumed on it, like I feel like I know the cast. The cast is really cool. The crew is really cool.
I feel this movie in my soul. I feel the soul of this movie in my soul. I feel like the content of this movie, and I feel like the way they made this movie, I relate to it so much.
See, that's where my opinion wavered a little bit, because at first I just thought it was, a drug-related film, which I don't really have much to say on that. But once you bring in the whole like Faustian legend thing, it's something that we all could, probably relate to. We all want to make that deal.
Yeah, that is true. I can relate to both that and the drug aspect.
I feel like you're going to have a lot to say.
I have a lot to say. I don't even know where to begin with this movie. But one thing I just want to say about the making of that movie, it really hit home for me as a guy who right now, as we're recording this, tomorrow morning, back on set, I took all of this film gear and I built a fort out of it that I'm now recording underneath. And my friend who was just helping me set this up was like, aren't they going to be mad if they see what you've done with this stuff? And I was like, well, I'm going to get it back before they notice.
Do you have like very expensive equipment propped up against each other? Like where some damage could occur?
I have the camera, which is very expensive, on a tripod right behind my chair. So every time I lean back, I feel the camera start to fall. So let's not lean back, people.
I feel like at some point you're going to get a little too relaxed and then you're going to lean back and knock it over. I'm predicting it now.
That is very, very, very possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so for someone who has never seen the film Brain Damage, which came out in 1989?
88, I think.
88?
I want to say 88, which that was a big year in film. You had Die Hard, Rain Man, Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Young Guns,
Crocodile Dundee 2, and you had Brain Damage.
That's great. What a murderer's row of cinematic classics.
Now, I know you are aware of a lot of film back in 1988. Were you ever aware of this film? Like ever see the box in like a video rental store or anything?
I am going to confess right now that I don't know if I ever even heard of this movie before I ordered the Arrow Blu-ray.
Yeah. I feel like I've only gotten into it, or I've heard of it when I started collecting the Arrow videos.
I was very into Fangoria probably in like 1988. And I feel like they wrote about Basket Case a lot, or maybe it was Basket Case 2 a couple years later.
Probably, yeah.
But I'd never heard of this movie.
Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with Basket Case. I've still never seen it, but I definitely grew up being very much aware of that film.
Yeah,
And
same
even
for me.
Basket Case too. But Brain Damage completely, eluded me.
So, really briefly, Brain Damage is the story of a guy who gets, I guess, what you'd call like a brain parasite of some kind.
Yeah, it
And
forms like a symbiotic relationship with it.
yeah, and it's a kind of a Faustian bargain movie, as you said. It's kind of a drug metaphor, and uh, it's like so. Not in a bad way, but you feel the grime on you when you watch this film. You feel the grime of late 80s New York City.
Oh, definitely. I like that they actually describe in the one of the features of New York City actually being like a character.
Yeah. I heard it described somewhere as like this is like the equivalent of graffiti. Like, it's what graffiti is to like mainstream art. This is to mainstream cinema. And it really feels like, I mean, this feels like a punk production.
It really does. And I did you notice in some of the interviews, like the star of the film, what's his name? Rick Hurst was wearing a Clash shirt.
Yeah.
And one of the makeup artists, I forgot his name already, but he was wearing a Minor Threat shirt.
Oh, Gabe Bartalis?
No, not Gabe Bartalis, the other one. I think his name was Dan. He was Dan Fry.
Dan Fry. Oh, okay.
And he was wearing a Minor Threat shirt. But he had like a collared shirt over it, but you could see he had, the sheep running through the meadow or whatever that graphic was. And I just felt at the time, these guys were definitely like, especially the Club Hell scene. You knew like they were, even Frank Henenlotter. I know I'm getting off topic for a second, but like the ending of the film, he said, the whole light effect coming out of Brian's head, that was inspired by a magazine song called, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that?
I heard him say that on the commentary, but I honestly have never heard of that band.
Yeah. It was inspired by the magazine song called Light Pours Out of Me, which is very fitting. And they were, a post-punk band. The whole Howard Devoto, I think, or Devoto from Buzzcocks, for anybody that's into early punk. But did you find, I'm just going back to a second, did you find it endearing when Frank Henenlotter would purchase from a video store copies of the film of Brain Damage to give as gifts?
Oh.
And he would pay the full retail price.
I mean, I find that as endearing as anything I've ever heard in my life.
He would go. Another thing, did you see the segment on the Superfan?
I did not watch that.
It's weird that he like befriended just a random fan of the film and like sent the guy like scripts and like some signed stuff and like some one of a kind pieces. And I was just like, wow, that could be us. We could be like a super fan and befriend Frank Henenlotter.
I am a super fan. I don't know. It's like I am kind of not even sure how to do this episode because I just really like this movie so much. Like I don't know what to say except that I love this movie. And I can officially say it has knocked Blood Rage out of the #1 spot.
It's not cranberry sauce.
Wait, Blood Rage was holding strong at #1?
Blood Rage has been at #1 this entire time. Our fans know it. Why don't you know it?
I thought for sure something had to replace Blood Rage, but I thought for me, Frankenhooker knocked the Blood Rage out, but not for the #1 spot.
I as people heard in the last episode, which I have a very vague memory of, I liked but did not love Frankenhooker, but I feel like if I go back and watch it now, I probably will love it since I love this movie so much.
I'm kind of wishing that Frank Henenlotter had a larger body of work because I would really like to watch all his work.
Me too. At least we still have Basket Case in front of us.
Yeah, that's exciting. And that's the big one. That's the cult classic. Although they did kind of make it seem like Brain Damage was a cult classic. And I feel like I would have heard about it up until being 39 years old.
I mean, I think this is just one of those movies that somehow escaped us, but is definitely a cult classic.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the main guy, the Rick Hurst, the main guy of the film, he said his kids were fans of the movie without even realizing that he was a star.
Well, looks like his kids are cooler than us.
Well, his kids are probably almost our age.
Do you know that actually on this movie right now, which we'll be filming tomorrow in less than 11 hours, there is a guy who, one of the actors, is in General Hospital or was in General Hospital at the same time as Rick Hurst.
Oh, you should try to get a story or something.
I will certainly do that.
Although it doesn't help us now, but it'd be cool to find out just for your own sake.
Yeah. All right, so let's just jump into this film, unless we have any viewer mail.
Do we have any viewer mail?
We do actually have some viewer mail coming in, but nothing we need to respond to.
I'm dying to know what kind of mail we're getting.
Just, people are like,
That's exciting
the
to hear.
episodes need to be 10 times longer. And I'm like, all right.
Is that what everybody's asking for? Or just like one person?
iTunes has a limited memory. That's the problem here. We can't crash the whole system. Anyway, okay, so let's jump into our cast and crew overview. There's a lot of interesting things in this cast and crew.
Yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with Frank Henenlotter, or do we need to talk about him anymore?
I mean, I don't know what to say about him except that I love him so much.
I would hate to find out that he's involved in some scandal because he just seems like such a cool guy.
I did have that thought like a moment ago, and I was like, I'm not going to say that on the podcast. But he would be the most crushing. If someone ever Me Too'd Frank Henenlotter, I will have to leave the world.
It's like Tom Hanks and then Frank Henenlotter. It's like two beloved people.
So yeah, Frank Henenlotter directed this. He directed Basket Case 1 and 2. He directed Frankenhooker, as we saw in the previous episode.
What's he work on now? Is he still active?
I think that he mentions on the commentary working on something. Oh, The Trial of Mike Diana, a documentary.
Okay.
And Neil Gaiman is in it. And
really?
It's something about New York City artists. And he also did something about Banksy.
Oh, wow. That actually sounds pretty cool.
But yeah, he was kind of, a classic indie filmmaker in the way that John Cassavetes or Larry Cohen or Ed Burns. I couldn't think of another one.
Those are good choices, though. I mean, just their artistic approach makes them very notable. Like, even if you don't like the films, they should be appreciated.
Yeah. I loved, just to jump to the film for one quick second, when Brian is having his first trip with Elmer's drug, and he looks up at his light fixture and it becomes an eyeball. Yeah. Frank was like, that's actually my light fixture. He's like, I love getting those like personal touches in there, like, and looking and seeing like, oh, that's my light fixture. I
did hear that part.
Yeah, that was cool. Did you hear the part in the commentary when he said that he still has the bigger version of Elmer, but it's been deteriorating, so he's got it in his bedroom underneath a blanket?
It pains him to watch him fall apart.
I would donate to a GoFundMe to restore Elmer so Frank can take that blanket off of him and really experience his bedroom the way that he wants to.
I would love to see how you would restore him. I would be curious to know what kind of paper mache skills you have and sculpting skills.
I would be hiring people to do it. Someone in this house upstairs right now is actually, I bet you could do it.
That should be your bargaining chip to get him on the show.
Well,
make him an offer that you could restore Elmer and who would have to appear in the show.
But then Elmer's got to go in my museum I'll be building around having Elmer. So yeah, Frank Henenlotter. I guess the second big crew person to mention would be Gabe Bartalos joining us again right after Frankenhooker.
Yeah,
love this guy.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy. I'm sure you could explain this better, how they gave him the reins to take over as the effects artist.
Well, after Basket Case, Frank was pitching a movie called Insect City, which I would donate to a GoFundMe to have Insect City made as a graphic novel. Or at least I'd like to read the script. But he was working on a movie called Insect City, and he went to meet with a makeup artist. And when he was telling the makeup artist about what he envisioned for the film, the makeup artist was like audibly sighing and just acting super disinterested. And the assistant, who was Gabe Bartalos, was like, oh, that sounds great. And he was like really enthusiastic about what Frank was saying. And then years later, Frank was like, I've got to track down that assistant. And that's how Gabe Bartalos really got the start to his career.
Wow. And I think he's moved on to being a director now, right?
Yeah, he has. And he also directed that very strange feature on the Frankenhooker Blu-ray.
The one you watched? I didn't watch that one.
Full of
You talked
huge
about
choices, but I liked it.
What do you mean by huge choices? I already forgot about that. I think did you mention that in the Frankenhooker episode?
Like just as far as like when you watch a special feature on a Blu-ray or DVD, you're not really expecting it to be like really weird. There's kind of like some kind of Tim Heidecker-esque comedy that
Oh, okay.
I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I have to say, like, he definitely brings some ingenuity to these effects.
Yeah.
For that time period and for that budget.
Oh yeah.
Like even the scene when, like, I don't want to go into the scene now because I like the scene a lot, but when Brian's ear, or he pulls off like the brain tissue out of his ear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you see how they filmed that?
Yeah, that was
where they filmed everything on an angle.
That was really cool.
It was really cool, and it worked really well.
All of the big gags or whatever you would call them in this are executed really well, and even the places where like the stop motion is of course not going to look perfect, I still loved it enough. Great job, Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, what effects looked bad? Like in the sense, like where they look dated. Like I feel like the effects in Brain Damage look better than like the Star Wars prequels. And I'm sure you would agree to that.
I do agree with you. I think just at one point when Elmer kind of crawls across like a fallen body, it just like looked a little, not even on Harryhausen level kind of stop motion, but not bad.
I mean, I don't want to go. We're going to talk about Elmer, I'm sure, in length. But did you like the way he looked?
Yeah, I came to love him.
I actually did at first. At first viewing, I did not like the way. I thought it was very cheesy looking and comical. But once you realize it's intentional, you really grow to love him and appreciate him. And there's like little details in it that I mean, you probably wouldn't be able to see in the film, but just to know about it. Just like the phallic symbols that were sculpted into like his brain. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool.
And the way that he was colored, like, and the way that he was kind of lit, like it gave him a very unique look, like the blue and black kind of. Did you see did you listen to the Light, the documentary on the Blu-ray?
No, that's one of the ones I didn't watch.
Wow, it was great. It was up there with the Vamp one. Shout out to director Elijah Drenner and producer Ewan Cant.
I like that you know the crew for that for the specials
because they did a great job. I really like that.
I'm sure he did a good job.
But at the
making amends
at the end of the documentary, Andre Blay, who I guess you didn't experience at all, did you watch any features that included the producer Andre Blay?
Was that just the main feature?
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's the only thing I saw him in.
This guy is very interesting because
how so?
Basically what happened is he was in the industrial film business. This is the story as I understand it. He was in the industrial film business and he basically invented VCRs. And
really? Wow, that is interesting.
He either invented it or he was a really early business guy in that field. But the studios at this point didn't even have VCRs at all on their radar. So he was able to acquire Fox's whole back catalog. Then VCRs ended up blowing up and Fox had to buy back their catalog from him. So
he must have made a shitload of money.
He used that money to fund the following films.
I can't wait to hear
Prince of Darkness, Brain Damage, Jack's Back, the Blob remake, They Live, and the Village of the Damned remake. Pretty good value for your cash.
I'm not a big fan of some of those. Definitely not the Blob remake.
Really? The Blob remake is good, so go fuck yourself.
You like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. You are the one.
I don't like the original Blob.
You are the one who.
I don't like the original Blob either.
You're in big trouble now.
Go on.
You're in big trouble now because the Blob remake is beloved among horror fans. You just didn't get the memo. Frank Darabont's script, directed by Chuck Russell. I recently watched it and I was like, it's actually pretty good.
I don't have to follow the trends. I'm allowed to go out on a limb, go rogue, and say that the film's not
Get
great.
in the fucking ring. A couple other interesting cast and crew elements. Like any kind of low budget film, different people play different roles, and you find out, that one person did something that you wouldn't have expected. For instance, on the movie I'm working on, I'm the producer, but I'm craft services. So
you're always that role.
I am always that role because I love it.
You get a credit for that?
I would never credit myself as that. People would look at my IMDb page and be like, that guy's gone downhill. But even on movies that have like a proper crafty, I always get involved because I just like to feed people. But it reminded me when I saw, first of all, James Muro, the director of Street Trash, was the Steadicam operator in this.
You know what's funny? I've always want to see Street Trash. That's been on my list of movies to watch for the longest time. And I think also the guy from Frankenhooker, the main guy, I can't think of his name now, but he's in that as well.
Oh, yeah. He's the star of that, I think. But I've also not seen Street Trash. But
I really hope that becomes an Arrow film at some point because I want to watch that.
But an interesting thing that Frank said on the commentary is that James Muro was like, first of all, he was like, I think 14 years old, and he worked on Basket Case as like a
he was like a legend around the set, though. Like everybody, he was like the king of the set.
And then he bought he talked to Frank Henenlotter and was like, hey, I'm going to buy a Steadicam. And Frank was like, don't do that. But James Muro actually went on to become like the biggest Steadicam operator in Hollywood. He did Terminator 2, A Few Good Men, Falling Down, True Lies, Casino, Heat, LA Confidential. I mean, he's got a million credits.
Yeah, but what has he done recently?
Well, he's currently on the TV show Longmire, which he also directed some episodes of.
That's actually a really impressive body of work. So
it is a very impressive body of work, and so
I would love to have. I would love to have a quarter of those credentials.
And did you know that his parents owned the salvage yard where the big scene takes place?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that. Did you learn all this from the commentary, or did you watch another feature that I missed?
Damage all day.
Wow.
And his mother was the caterer on Brain Damage.
Repeat that.
And his mother was the caterer on Brain Damage.
And that's a role that you can definitely...
that is a role I could appreciate. At one point on the commentary, there's a scene where you see the homeless guy in the foreground, and like through the stairs, you see Brian suffering from his withdrawals. And they were like, oh, when we were doing this scene, there wasn't anywhere to set up the food. And I was like, wow, I could totally relate to that.
I did hear that. I did see that part or hear that part. And I knew that would mean something.
Yep. Here is along the crew lines, here is one that really baffles me. The composers, Clutch Riser and Gus Russo.
I was about to mention them.
They only did Brain Damage, Basket Case, and a video called Yoga Flow, which looks like an exercise video.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty good guess by that title.
And it is an exercise video. Yes, it is.
Man, I really love the score to this film.
I fucking love the score to this so much.
Did you actually go to try to find the soundtrack anywhere? Because I did, and I couldn't find it.
It's so good.
I even just that brief moment when it builds up after you see the Ackermans. Wait, I forgot. Right? Did it start with the Ackermans or did it start with the opening credit and title card?
I don't remember if it starts with them or not. I mean, I know the first scene's with them, but
that brief introduction, it's like only like 30 seconds, which you should play a clip of it. But where it builds up to the title card, it's awesome.
Yeah. And as we talked about last night while playing Rocket League on PlayStation, the part when he leaves the date and he's walking down St. Mark's Place, and it's like the camera is following him in a car alongside of him. The music that's playing then, so good.
Wait, that was St. Mark's
Yeah.
Place? Is that where they filmed
Yeah,
it?
in fact, they pass by Manic Panic, which I think Garrett used to bring us to.
But wasn't Trash and Vaudeville also on St. Mark's Place? I remember that story.
Yeah, I think so. Wasn't that you like went up the steps to go in there?
Yeah, yep. And you had a lot of. I think does that place still exist?
I would not know.
I just remember all the rich punks hanging out. You would see them all on the streets.
Well, that I can relate to as a rich punk. I also wanted to say about one more thing about Frank. This was his first 35 millimeter film, and the whole movie has like a very like carefully constructed feel. Like you could tell that he storyboarded the whole movie and like thought about every shot. And
yeah, I actually like the shot a lot. I think it was his idea when the Ackermans are withdrawing and they're foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
In the way it's the overhead shot.
Yeah, that was great.
That was like all his idea, right?
He's also his favorite thing is not directing; it's camera operating. So, remember in Frankenhooker when he was briefly the DP, it turns out that actually that's what he likes doing, and I think he was camera operator for this whole movie, which is pretty impressive.
Really? You're bringing in some big facts here.
Big facts. Another thing about this movie, since we already mentioned Frank and Gabe Bartalos, is that almost all of the movie was shot on sets. As Frank explained in the commentary, it's because
it was on a warehouse, right?
Yeah, that was the other amazing thing, because it was a warehouse where on the first floor there was like an equipment rental business that they were getting equipment from, but wasn't yet completely set up. So the guy who was running it was like, "God damn it!" Then there's like a floor that they turned into sets, and then there was like a floor where they did effects, and then there was like a production office. And
didn't Gabe Bartalos and the other guy live on?
Yeah.
Live there as
people live there. And it's just like right now, I've got someone sleeping upstairs and we're shooting in our office, and it's really quite an experience.
Wow, this hits
close to home. I just wish I was as beloved as Frank.
Didn't they say that at the warehouse, which I think was on 33rd Street? Didn't they say that getting to the warehouse each day was in a very seedy area of old New York City, where they would have to cross over a lot of like crack vials, syringes, and used condoms?
And I think that's what inspired Frankenhooker, as I said in the last episode.
Oh, that's right. Did you know that Frank Henenlotter was starting to write this screenplay in 1984? So this was something that he wanted to work on for a while.
That's cool.
It's funny. I mean, this is a movie that like Nancy Reagan dreamed about.
It's true.
A very anti-drug film.
This is like, I'm pretty surprised that the drug element is actually kind of secondary, because it really does feel like it captures drugs really well.
You're gonna have to explain.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you all about how drugs work, Rusty. But
I don't even take over the counter stuff. So this is your forte.
Who else in the crew should we mention before we move on?
Can you just explain, or can we just explain for people that don't know the whole with Frank Henenlotter, how he was inspired by the Faustian legend?
This brain parasite, which needs brains to survive and uses Brian to get to those brains, provides him also with like a very euphoric kind of high. And so,
right.
It's the deal with the devil is that he can feel amazing and see amazing things, but he's going to have to like help this thing kill people.
Right. So basically it offers like euphoria, but at a price.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's just talk about the cast quickly. I mean, there's not I'll say this, that besides for Rick Hurst, there's not much there.
Well,
would you say?
No, I mean, but let's not insult them.
I'm not trying to insult them. I'm just saying that, like, for example, the Ackermans, who I thought they did a great job as the old couple, they didn't really do anything else after that.
Well, they're deceased. So what do you want them to do? Perform via Ouija board?
Wait, now you're insulting them because they passed away in 2007 and 2011. So from 88 to that time.
I didn't realize that.
And then the guy in the shower in the sleazy motel, in the Sunshine Motel, in the Bowery, was Joe Gonzalez, who was Zorro from Frankenhooker.
Yeah, and do you know that he was just a random guy they found in the gym for this film? And then he
certainly looks like a gym rat.
And then he ended up having that big role in Frankenhooker, and now Frank doesn't know where he is. Yeah.
Oh, really? He's disappeared. And then the girl from the Hell Club, the one that in the infamous blowjob scene was also in Frankenhooker. She was one of the sex workers, Vicky Darnell.
And also, I just want to say James Quay was the editor, listed as the editor on IMDb, but the assistant editor in the features, it seemed like he was. But he went on to edit Goodfellas.
Oh, wow. He did find that stardom he was looking for.
I don't remember James looking for stardom.
Did he mention something to that effect, that he wanted to see the
He
bright
seemed
lights?
like a great
big
guy.
City?
He seemed like a great guy too.
He does seem. I'm not. You think I'm bad mouthing these people? I want them to
I
be
will
my friend.
defend the cast and crew of Brain Damage more than I will my own family.
You're willing to throw our 20-year friendship down the drain for these people.
I would do it for one of the extras. That is my commitment to this film.
Any other cast? Because Rick Hurst was in quite a few soaps. I guess he's a soap star. And he was also in a few episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, which I'm sure both of us watched at that time.
Yes, yeah. Rick Hurst is great in this film. I feel like Rick Hurst
he is really great.
kind of, without his performance where he's totally committed and it totally feels like he's taking it seriously, while not being so serious that it's, alienating and stupid. Like he hits just the right note. Like it's so easy to imagine someone doing it a little more knowingly, like cheesy, and ruining it.
I mean, it's funny that like in his in one of the specials where they're interviewing him, how he completely like immersed himself into the role, and he like listened to Pink Floyd to try to get into the trippiness of it, and then he also like slept on a set in the actual bed in his room.
Oh, that's cool.
And they were like, "What?" And they're like, "Rick, why are you doing that?" The really crazy thing, this is his first film too.
I did not know that.
This guy would have been a veteran at this point.
And I personally didn't find it very interesting, but it does seem like every single person writes down that the cut on his lip was just a random thing that Frank put on because he thought he looked too pretty.
Wasn't there a rumor, though, that there's more to it than that, that there was like a scene that they cut out that he got into a fight defending his brother?
It seems like there's different stories. It's hard to know what the truth is.
Yeah.
Sounds like... Oh, one thing I want to say about James Quay. I guess you didn't see the documentary, but he mentions that the first cut they did was 66 minutes. And he was like, then we went back in and we just kind of like let things breathe a little more. And he's like, and it totally feels right at the length it is. And I've actually I've had the same exact experience where I cut something down like way too much, where it was like, oh, you cut all the jokes out, or like, I could totally see those guys doing that.
I know it wasn't the Vamp episode.
Wow. Another crew member worth mentioning is David Kindlin, who helped Gabe out with the Elmer design, and he was the mechanical effects artist, I think.
Was he the one? Who was the one that secured like the rights to film in the Sunshine Motel? Because that's a crazy story.
It is a crazy story. I think it was told by. I'm pretty sure it was told by.
Was it the producer?
Yeah,
it was. No, it
wasn't it? Didn't Blay?
But he wasn't the one that secured it. He wasn't the one that went. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was the guy who talked to the people there. But yeah, in the story, like they went to go shoot at the Sunshine Motel, and it was like, was it like a mafia owned place or something?
Yeah, they alluded to that. Yeah,
it was like they went and like there's like this big burly Italian guy, and then there was like a guy sitting in the background, and it was like, they want to shoot, and he's like, come here. I guess the other by far most notable person in this movie who is not credited on the film.
Was that a union thing, by the way?
Yeah. John, I keep forgetting.
John Zachary.
He is the perfect voice of Elmer, the brain parasite.
This is the start of your new life, Brian. A life without worry or pain or loneliness. A life filled instead with colors and music and euphoria.
Now, I'm sure there's people that don't know who he is, but he's legendary. In the 50s, he was a host of like horror films, right? For like weekly horror films.
Yeah, like in the old time horror host era, which I vaguely remember there being some kind of horror hosts when we were kids.
Didn't like Fright Night pay homage to him?
Oh yeah, yeah, big time.
With the Roddy McDowell character.
Yeah.
That's what made me. As soon as I heard the name, that's what stood out to me. Was Friday Night. He's really well known, or was really well known. I mean, he just passed away last year at 98. But in 1960, he was on an episode of What's My Line, if you know that show. And right off the bat, like two of the panelists knew who he was.
John,
Yeah?
well, I hope I'm not divulging anything, but he's a big favorite of my son's. So.
Oh, wonderful. That's true. There's 2 disqualifications, Miss Kilgallen.
Well, Mr. X is still a mystery to me. Are you in the entertainment world?
Yes.
Are you a performer?
Yeah?
I mean, if you were a kid that grew up in the 50s, you probably definitely know him.
Do you know Lorenzo Music? I'm sure you know who that is.
No, I don't know who that is.
Really? He was the voice of Garfield and the voice of Venkman in The Real Ghostbusters.
Oh, okay. I don't know the name, but I know the voice, certainly.
I am about to tell you has never been told to another living soul.
Catchy beginning.
Brace yourself for this.
I'm ready. I'm sitting down.
Do you know that he was the co-creator of the Bob Newhart Show?
Get out of here, really?
Yep.
That who does that appeal to, though?
I don't know.
I'm Larry. This is my brother Daryl. That's my other brother Daryl.
When I put on Spotify my, the top songs of 2017 that just got sent, when you log in, you can see what your top songs are.
Oh, I don't even want to know.
My
Don't
number
give me a heart attack.
my number 5 most listened to song in the year 2017, the Mr. Belvedere theme song.
Streaks on the china, never mattered before. Who cares?
Well, I've certainly heard you do a rendition of it playing Rocket League many times over.
Drop kick your jacket.
The lyrics for that are pretty bizarre, right? Because he's saying drop kick your jacket is one of the first lines.
When you drop kicked your jacket as you came through the door.
Well, he's saying that, the way things used to be in this house is that someone would come home and the first thing they would do would be drop kick their jacket. But
no one glared.
Where we go? What were we talking about? Oh, so the monster. Let's go back to Elmer.
Hi.
What did you think of Elmer? I mean, Frank Henenlotter said that he didn't want he didn't want the Freddy Krueger monster. I think he also wanted something more playful against the backdrop of like something so serious as in like drug use and that kind of theme. But he also, talking about Frank Henenlotter, wanted something with a more beautiful voice like John Zachary, because this way it would have been more deceptive.
What are you? I am you, Brian. I'm all you'll ever need.
I don't understand.
You will, Brian. From now on, your life will take on a whole new light. And all you have to do is look into the light and listen. Listen to the light, Brian.
Instead of having like a Freddy Krueger monster being, talking with like...
Let's get high.
When Brian wakes up and there's like blood in the bed and he goes into the bathroom and he's like,
I don't know who you are and I don't know what you are, but I know you're in here. So you may as well come on out.
And then Elmer like crawls from around underneath the t-shirt in a cool effect with great score playing. And then it comes around behind his back and just goes, hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
As soon as that happened, I was like, I love this film.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a voice like that, that you'll do anything it says. Like, I'm sure if you were presented with that opportunity, like him talking like that.
Oh, yeah. He sounds so reasonable. When he's explaining to Brian, he's like,
I'll make you a deal. I'll show you the light if you'll take me for a walk.
A walk. Where?
Anywhere you like.
and the effect that he gives him is very like trippy, like, and I have to say, all the kind of drug scenes are very cool.
Now, which scenes are you talking about? The junkyard scene, the club scene?
I mean, I love the junkyard scene.
Yeah, I like the club scene more. That had a lot more appeal to me.
Yeah.
But I guess, well, explain why you like the junkyard scene.
I just love the feeling of him running around and seeing through his eyes like these magnificent things, but we see that it's just like cars.
The only thing that I had a problem with, it seems like he got addicted way too quickly. Isn't it like Or was it, I guess, explain that, because I'm sure you could, since I don't have a frame of reference. It seems like he was turned into a junkie like instantly.
I don't know. The whole dynamic here is weird because it's kind of like I'm kind of like Jerry Garcia talking to Nancy Reagan right now.
This has certainly been a revelation to me, Mrs. Reagan. I think it'd be a good idea to let all the parents know what's going on, and not to mention the police if there are drugs being sold in my school.
But I mean, he's definitely on cloud nine in that junkyard. He's seeing things. He's seeing like that electro pop pink color in the night sky.
This is absolutely fucking great.
What else can you say? I mean, he seems like he's completely either blacked out, or I mean, he doesn't recall any of the incident. He doesn't recall the guard being murdered.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like American Werewolf in London, in that like he kind of realizes later that he's been murdering people.
Part of my talent, Brian, is to spare you any unpleasantness.
Yeah, and obviously has an issue with it, and that's when he tries to withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
And finds out that he can't.
He goes to the flop house to kind of talk to Elmer and kind of get his bearings.
What a nice room, Brian. This is a real classy place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the scene where things really escalate, where we realize that Elmer's like evil.
Came from that girl at the club. What girl? The girl whose brains I ate.
What?
The blood came from a girl whose brains I sucked out.
You sucked out her brains?
Yeah, right through her mouth.
Is she dead?
Of course she's dead. What, are you kidding?
And that Brian is really suffering. And Brian tries to go without Elmer's injections. And Elmer's just like...
Good. A little contest. I don't get a brain, you don't get my juice. We'll just see who cracks first.
Do you know why, does Frank Henenlotter say in the commentary why Elmer needs to be immersed in water?
I don't know, but it's a cool touch because like I love the part when Brian's brother and girlfriend like open up the all the locks on the door and they see that he just has buckets of water and they're like, he's hiding buckets of water?
He also has a ton of locks in the bathroom, which do you remember when his girlfriend Barbara comes over to see him and like hasn't spoke to him in days, and like the brother is just like, oh, he like takes baths for like 3 hours at a time. So she's like, what? And she like knocks on the door.
Yeah. And he's like, woo!
He's having like the time of his life in the bathtub with Elmer. They're just playing in the bathtub. No,
I loved it. Things
are getting really weird around here.
Do you remember growing up, there was actually like toys and stuff geared towards kids to like make bath time more or more enjoyable?
Yeah.
Did you ever have any toys growing up, or like how did you pass the time? Do you remember?
In the bath?
Yeah. You remember Tubtown? Like that was like a big thing.
Yeah. I didn't spend enough time in the bathtub. That was kind of a problem.
What about now? You ever relax in a nice bath?
Now I do have good bathtubs for baths, but I don't do it too often.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I get the bath done and I get in it, I'm just like, okay, I get it. Now I'll get out.
It's very hit or miss with people. Some people look at it as just like, oh, you're just laying in your filth.
Mm-hmm.
And other people are like, are completely sold on the whole bath bomb thing.
Oh, yeah. I like when people are into it. I've got a friend who sometimes will stay with me when she's in LA and she likes taking baths. I'm always just like, get in the bath. Take a bath. You enjoy baths. Get in that bath. She's like, this is not a calming experience.
But back to Elmer.
Hi.
We already talked briefly about his look. What did you think of the process of Gabe Bartalos coming up with him? I mean, from when he conceptualized it, he pretty much had it down. Like the prototype looked just as good.
It really did. If not even a little better almost, but just at least in those images they showed. But yeah, so similar. And I loved Gabe Bartalos' approach that like Frank had everything planned out so precisely that he would do like the effect based on what the shot was. Mm-hmm. So it would be like, okay, we need a shot of the needle going in. So we're going to do the needle this way, do this, do this, do this. Like instead of doing everything like as just one big piece, like trying to build some like contraption that would have done it all, which a lot of people would have done.
Yeah.
doing it shot by shot was just kind of like part of the charming handmade quality of this film.
How many Elmers did they have?
They had 2. There was the one that was, they probably had more than 2, but they had 2 sizes at least. There was the one that was like the size that we see in the film, and then there was a bigger one for the close-ups.
Yeah. Do you like that they gave it cartoon eyes?
Were those cartoon eyes?
Yeah, it was like doll's eye. It was definitely very bizarre because it didn't seem like a classic like movie monster. It was very comical.
Yeah. But when you said cartoon eyes, I thought you meant animated eyes. The eyes were there in the model.
Yeah, it looked like stickers that they put on, but obviously it wasn't. What did you think Elmer looked like? Like, how would you describe him?
He was kind of like a turd.
Yeah, he looked like a dry turd.
Slug. I think I saw someone compare it to
eel.
I hate to make this reference, but I think I saw someone compare it to what's like the thing from South Park, like the poo.
Oh, Mr. Hanky.
Yeah.
Shit, I was going to say something else. Now I forgot. I'm losing my train of thought like crazy.
That's all right. I'll tell you what this. I'll tell you about drug experiences that this reminded me of. 2 things really leapt out at me in terms of like this didn't remind me of doing drugs like where the drug kind of knocks you out or kind of like makes you calm. Like it felt like taking some kind of propulsive drug. So I'm not going to name names, but a close colleague of mine and I went through a period where we were taking tons of Adderall to do film work. And there would be times where, you're halfway through the day on set or whatever it is, and you're like, okay, we need to take a little more. And we would sprinkle the balls of like break open the pill and like sprinkle the little balls like directly in your tongue. And it had this like very acrid taste. And that every time I saw Elmer injecting him, I felt that acrid taste in my mouth.
Wow. It triggered something.
It really did. It reminded me of like when you see him walking back from St. Mark's, it reminded me of like the way I would walk back from my old office and just like propulsively walking. I remember one time, so we used to take so much Adderall and then we would take like other drugs to come back to reality. Mm-hmm. And one time I took like whatever it was, like Ambien or something to come back down. And I'm walking home and my cousin walks right in front of my frame of vision dressed as a wizard. Oh. And I was like, what the fuck?
That really must have fucked with you.
And he didn't notice me. And I was just like, oh. And I didn't really process it until the next day. And I was just like, did he walk by me dressed as a wizard? And I texted him and I was like, did you walk on like whatever street it was, like Main and 2nd, dressed as a wizard last night? And he was like, I did.
There was something weird you told me. I don't remember. I wasn't hallucinating. It was I can't remember the story you told me.
I do have one psychedelic story that I like always think about. It's funny because my therapist
from LSD.
No, I only took LSD once in my life, and all I did was read Raymond Carver stories aloud to a very confused ex-girlfriend while sobbing.
Did you see colors while you were reading them?
I didn't see colors at all. I mean, it's like, maybe I just have never taken enough psychedelics, but it's more like a mental trip than like seeing like a fucking werewolf or something, like I've never had that kind of experience. Oh, but even my therapist one time was like, she's like, I don't know, sometimes when you abuse yourself with these mushrooms, and I'm like, I've taken mushrooms like twice in the last 10 years and I don't regret those times, because there was one time I took mushrooms that completely changed my life. My friend texted me in the morning and was like, hey, do you want to go to Disneyland and take mushrooms? And I was like, okay, that seems like it might be very challenging, so let's do it. And we go to Disneyland, we take the mushrooms like in the parking lot, and the whole time I'm kind of walking around and I'm like, okay, when are these going to really start hitting hard? And we're in Toontown, which is like the Roger Rabbit kind of, everything is kind of over the top cartoony. And of course, like we're in like a house with like these weird mirrors, and I'm just like, fuck, this is hitting really hard. And I was like, I might be losing my mind. And then I was like, nope, I'm okay. And I like pulled myself together. And then me and my friend were walking, through this huge crowd of people. And everyone that even like brushed past her was making her like swivel her head around. And like she was like, ah, ah, ah. And I was like, look at her. She is in the noise. She's in the noise. Like she is living in a favela. I kept thinking the word favela. I was like, but what you have to do is be above all of this noise and see things with perspective. And then we went to Space Mountain, and, I got like strapped, get strapped into the roller coaster. It starts going up and the music's like pumping, and the lights around the roller coaster are crazy, on drugs or not on drugs. And I thought to myself for a second, I was like, oh my God, I might die. And then I thought, well, this is like life. You're strapped in, you don't have a fucking choice, you might die, but at least this stuff looks crazy and there's cool music. And I swear, ever since then, I've been a bit more calm about life in general.
I just want to know why you were doing all this like self-reflection and stuff. What did you look like on the exterior walking around Disneyland? Like, what were people seeing?
I looked like Brian. I looked like Brian from this film.
I'm picturing you having like lesions on you and sweating, and maybe some like, like just staggering around.
Well, I always have the lesions. The lesions are my thing. My Tinder bio just is one word: lesions.
But anyway, so Elmer,
Hi.
Can you explain? I think I asked you this last night playing Rocket League, but like when he unhinges his mouth and it like slides down, and he has like all the teeth and like some blue like veiny things.
It was okay to get hard. It was okay to get hard. I told you last night.
That like thing that comes out of his mouth, which is the thing that injects into the back of your neck, the syringe thing. What do you know? What is that? Like I keep calling it a tendril, but I don't know what the hell the term is for that. I was hoping that in the commentary, Frank Henenlotter would explain that better. I didn't know such a thing.
Hold on, I think I might have it. Isn't there something called like a proboscis or something like that, or something? Like a mosquito? It's kind of like what a mosquito does.
Yeah, like okay. Well, there's also the monkey. That's is it? Wait, but what's the correct pronunciation? You're saying proboscis, but I don't think that's right.
I don't know. Can I tell you something totally unrelated but connected to low budget filmmaking?
Go for it.
I've got a mouse in my bathtub.
Oh, you're watching it for somebody, right?
No, the mouse is in the film, and we bought a cage on Amazon, but the mouse so easily got out of the cage. The mouse's name is Thomas. I was like, everyone else,
or a rat?
It's a mouse. Everyone else was on set, and I came back into the main living room area, and the mouse is just like on top of the cage, and I was like, am I seeing things, or is that mouse out of the cage? So anyway, we put the mouse's cage in the bathtub, and he can't get out of the bathtub. So if anyone ever has to house a mouse, put him in the bathtub.
I really hope you've done something to secure the drain. That it's not like those old drains that it can get to.
The drain is secured.
Okay, is it cute?
Yeah, I love Thomas.
Did you set up like little mazes for it to run through?
Well, we made a little house for him out of cardboard that's inside his cage that has 2 levels and a ramp, and is pretty cool.
I like what I'm hearing. But it injects its proboscis into the back of the neck, which it must be really long because it gets to like the brain cortex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And releases a fluid. And that fluid to me, the blue fluid, didn't that look like barbicide? Remember like going to the old like lemon tree?
Oh, yeah.
And they had like, the combs and stuff and the barbicide.
I remember going to the lemon tree just randomly once because I used to go to Gino, the old Italian barber.
Around their square?
And round the square. And I went to the lemon tree randomly, and the woman cutting my hair had a coffee mug with a naked man. You could see his dick, and he was like Playgirl. And I was like 8 years old, and I was so traumatized.
Wait, was it like like, like the pens, like where you flip them over and like the clothing would disappear, or like the cups, like if you put hot water in them, or
There
cold
was
water.
there was no gatekeeper. It was just a photo of who the guy I remember as Tom Selleck, but probably not Tom Selleck. Just laying there, hairy and nude.
I think one of my first introductions to naked women, my dad had left over like a relic from the 60s or early 70s, like barware, like cocktail glasses that had naked women on it, but they had like clothing. So once you put the cold like drinks in it, like the ice cubes, the clothing would disappear. But since they were so dated, by the time it was like 1982 or 81, that effect of the clothing was completely gone, and it was just naked women. And I would always open like the cupboard that they were in and just stare at them. There was like a set of four different women. And that was one of my first introductions.
To glasses?
No, yeah, to glasses. Although in first grade, I do clearly remember. You remember when bathrooms were in the classroom?
Oh, yeah. I remember at one point I thought I got locked in and I was like, help me, help me. And the door was
pull your pants
the door wasn't even locked.
It wasn't even closed. It was just open. You just wanted attention.
I probably did.
But there was like, do you remember it had like the vents at the bottom of the door, like the slats?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the slats was missing in the first grade classroom. And one of the girls in the class showed her genitals through it. And that was my introduction.
The police are on their way.
Oh, because I was in first grade.
I remember one time. This was much later, as in 8th grade, but I don't know if I ever told you this story. Mike, I'll be slide whistling that one.
Yes,
was like, "Hey, I live close to the school. Come over after school." And I went over to his house after school, and he had an Amiga, which, there's kind of those random computers that like every once in a while would fall like in a time period where it seemed super advanced. So that Amiga, whatever year that was, like it seemed fucking amazing. Like he had the Star Wars arcade game and like the voices were crystal clear. And
were they actually crystal clear? Because I remember the commercial for it and it sounded like very robotic.
Use the force, Luke.
Why are you getting quiet on me?
This is the end of the podcast.
Look at the size of that thing.
Then he was like, "Hey, look at this." And he showed me like a video that he had taped off of Playboy of people singing like a French song and like dancing around naked. And then his mom gave us...
How quickly did you cry?
I didn't cry, but I was just like, why am I looking at this? And who is this kid? Like, cause he was like very much just like a new friend. And
wait, what year was it? What grade were you in?
Like 8th grade, I think, or could have been 9th grade.
Yeah. Okay.
But then like, his mom gave me a ride home and he's like, "Hey mom, like, what does it mean? Like, voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?" Or like whatever it was. And he just kept goading her into her realizing that he had shown me like nudie videos. And she was like, "If you think you're coming over here to make my son watch adult films." I was like, I don't even know what's going on. And then like, she told my mom and my mom was like, "What, Edward?" And I was like, this is all against my will.
So you wait, 8th grade. I'm sure you were masturbating by then, though.
No, I wasn't.
Really?
I wasn't.
Come on. Come on.
I wasn't. I mean, I wish I was.
What the hell were you doing in middle school? It must have been a miserable experience.
I just didn't know. I remember I would like in 7th grade I started having wet dreams, and the first time I thought I was dying. And I thought, I was like, well, I pissed my pants. I was like,
I thought that the first time as well.
I was like, now I'm a bedwetter. And then I looked at it and I was like, but it's just weird because it's not like piss.
You know what's a crazy story? My first wet dream, which is embarrassing, but I was at a cousin's house and I slept over there. And I still to this day clearly remember that I was having a dream and Pam Anderson was in the dream. And she was like trying to like goad me into having sex with her, and like I wasn't sure what to do exactly, but she got like naked, and then like I had the wet dream moment, and I woke up and and I was just wearing boxer shorts and they were like soaking wet, so I assumed I peed myself. But the thing that was really confusing was I had to go to the bathroom really badly, So I was just like, wait, why am I going to the bathroom? Why do I have to pee really bad if I just peed myself? So I freaked out. I thought something was wrong. So I left my cousin's house to where my mom was staying at my grandmother's house, which was like down the road, which was like a half a mile away. And this is like 5 a.m. I'm in boxer shorts and a t-shirt just running down the street.
What?
No joke. And this is like, was in New Jersey. So there was no sidewalks or anything. It was like ditches on both sides of the street. So like trucks, like there was 2 trucks that passed and like asked me if I needed help. And I like, that freaked me out even more. So I just like, was like, just kept running. And I like frantically like knocked on my grandmother's door, and my mom like, and like a, a sleep stupor, like answered. She's like, what's going on? I'm just like, I'm really sick. I need to come in. And I took that underwear and I put it in like a plastic bag. And I didn't want my mom to discover it. So I put it in like my overnight bag and I took it home. And then when I got home, I put it in a closet for like weeks. And then finally, I smelled, like I opened the bag. I got to get rid of these like piss soaked boxers. And when I opened the bag, it smelled like, I'm sure you had a cum rag at one point in your life.
Many.
And that like mildewy, like old cum smell?
Better than I know anything else.
It smelled like that. And I was just like, that's not pee. What is that? And then finally when I got a little older and became more acquainted with that aroma, I was just like, oh, that's what that was. So it took like 6 months to figure out that I didn't pee myself.
I just like that there's a trucker out there who is like, I'll never know. I'll never know what was wrong with that kid. To my dying day, I'll always wonder if he was really okay. He was in boxers running alongside a ditch.
The more shameful thing that's still brought up to this day at like family parties, luckily I don't go to many of those, but like family parties is like, oh, you remember that time when you were like 11 years old that you like left our house at 4 a.m? And why did you leave? And I still to this day do not have the heart to tell them what really happened. Oh, if they ever listen to this, they'll know why now, but it's still like a mystery to them and it's still brought up every year.
That reminds me of much more recent similar thing. So as you know, I used to go to Maine every summer for many years. And I went I still go, but not to the same place. I went to the same place, which was in Bridgeton, Maine, a town where Stephen King spent some time. And a lot of, as I mentioned in previous episodes, a lot of stories are based there, including The Mist. And, it was like 11 cottages around a lake. And I went there from when I was like 0 years old till like 35. And for my friend, she was like, oh, make like one last like video tour of the place. And I did. And then I mentioned this to my brother, and him and his wife were like, oh, we want to see it. And I completely forgot the commentary I did during the video. So I'm like showing them the video. And then in the video, I go into like this bedroom and I'm like, and here's the place I first jerked off. And I was like, okay, that's enough of this video. Boop.
Did you ever get caught jerking off by any family members? Oh, you did?
Yep. I was caught by my mother. I had just jerked off to the show Melrose Place. All right, let's get back on track. Brain damage. Rusty, you said you had 5 scenes you want to talk about. Let's hear these 5 scenes.
Well, before I start, there's this one thing that the one thing I didn't like about the film.
Okay.
The one thing I found like inscrutable was where the film begins for Brian. Like, what I'm trying to say is, it seems like it just picks up in the middle of his life. We don't know anything about him. And he has a girlfriend that's coming over to go to a concert, which he kind of just like dismisses and sends her off with the boyfriend or his brother. But like, we never really get a clear, like, portrayal of like his girlfriend or the brother. Like, obviously they're impacted by his downfall, but we never really care about them. And we don't really know what Brian's like in his normal life. So the only thing we know of Brian is him of becoming a junkie. And I feel like maybe there could have been that scene explaining his split lip just to see, like, I think he was described as like a nice guy, or he was supposed to be like a nice guy. And I just felt like that was never really set up.
I can see that. Complaint, although I disagree.
No, I'm not complaining because I still really like the film. I'm just saying that it just picks up in a weird place.
I agree, but I feel that the way it picks up in a weird place makes the movie even weirder.
No, I do love ambiguity, and I especially like that with Elmer, because we never really know what kind of creature it is or his origins. We just know that he always existed.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like, the ambiguous. I can't say it, so edit that out. Ambiguity of like that there is, that it is vague, but I felt like there could have been a little something.
Yeah, there could have been a little bit more. There's a funny moment on the commentary where the person doing the interview with Frank is like, "Oh, I never noticed that the girlfriend has like a wedding ring or an engagement ring on. Does that mean like they're supposed to be engaged?" And Frank Henenlotter kind of just like so oblivious what he said. He's just like, "Oh yeah, he's got a ring. What is it?" And he's like, "No, but he's got a ring on the ring finger." He's like, "I don't think so." It's like, "But you see it."
Yeah, I think there's only one mention of her name being Barbara. Like she's such like a minor character, even though like she's obviously very concerned for Brian's well-being.
You're on drugs, right?
The fact that he tells her to keep away because she'll be killed, and she's got that curiosity that she follows him into the subway, and does lead to her death.
Yeah, in a tragic feeling scene.
But I don't know. Do you think it was because she cared, or did she just need to know what was really happening? I feel it was like a curiosity killed a cat kind of situation.
I guess so, yeah. But I think she did care for Brian. I liked how I thought it was a cool portrayal of, they both still cared for Brian, even though like they end up like sleeping together. It wasn't like in a lesser film they could have been portrayed like negatively or as having turned on him.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seemed like the brother always kind of had feelings. He does say that he always had feelings for her, but like his brother was important to him. He swooped in pretty quickly.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, one thing.
I was going to say, the drug, like the trippingness of the movie, like I really feel like you're in Brian's experience. Like I felt it much more viscerally than I do in, let's say, a piece of shit like The Bad Batch. Like the tripping scene in this felt really real and alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's on the date with Barbara and his meatballs and his spaghetti are turning into brains, and there's all like the POV shots like looking down at the brains, and the sound is dropping away. That's fucking great work.
Didn't that remind you a little bit of from Nightmare on Elm Street when he like the meatballs on the pizza are like the faces of like the Elm Street kids?
That's true. Yeah, it did remind me of that.
But I like the way the brains are like pulsating, and he could like was completely losing himself. Like he couldn't hold that conversation with her. Although he did try to explain, I guess he did care for her in the sense of what he was capable of. He did try to explain that something was taking him over, but like Elmer interjected and wouldn't let him speak.
Okay, I'll try to explain it, but I doubt you're going to believe me. Remember that night you and Mike went to the concert? Well, when I woke up, I don't think I should explain it right now.
Yeah, that was an effective moment too. The way he kind of like keels over. Great, Rick Hurst in this movie. I got to find out tomorrow. The guy actually just emailed me. I should. I'll be like, all of your very valid concerns aside, do you know Rick Hurst?
I wonder how he is in like the soaps and stuff, because he was really, really great in this.
Oh, he seems. I think he's got like daytime Emmys, maybe.
Yeah, he did say that he has some Emmys, because he was saying that his kids friends recognize him from this, even though he has Emmys. Do you think during the date scene, do you think Barbara had some like misgivings about what Brian was saying?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he reminds me of in the scene in Network, which I really love, when I can't remember, William Holden's character is confronting Howard Beale, and he's like, "I feel like you're having a breakdown." He's like, "Breakdown? This is a breakthrough. I feel connected to every living thing." And we've all been there.
This is not a psychotic episode. This is a cleansing moment of clarity.
One of my favorite scenes, which I'm sure, I don't know if you're on like it or not, but the club hell scene.
That's a great scene.
Just the fact that they included like a punk club.
Yeah.
And if I saw this in 1988, that would have been like a huge thing to me.
A lot of the extras are crew members.
Yeah. One of the guys with the mohawk dancing. Yeah.
Gabe Bartalos.
Which I didn't recognize. And I knew what he looked like. But
I know. Between the Frankenhooker features and these features, 2 episodes in a row, I'm like, I know Gabe Bartalos. I was just asking Sasha, I was like, do you know Gabe Bartalos? And she's like, no, who's that? And I was like, oh, he's a guy I know. I was like, oh, I don't know him.
The band that's playing at the club is actually a real new wave band from the late 70s, the Swimming Pool Q's, if you've ever heard of them. They're playing a song, Corruption, which if you want to play a clip of that now. I love the dancing, the punks all dancing around. There was one girl particularly that stood out to me that I would have loved back in the day. She was dancing behind Brian and Gabe Bartalos. She had like a wig on that looked very similar to like Kathleen Turner's from Crimes of Passion. And just that very like late 80s look that always appealed to me. But it was weird that like Brian completely looks out of his mind. Like when Brian's like dancing around the club and he's like walks in and he's like cackling and then he starts pogoing and like just moving about. Like, how does he appeal to that one girl at the bar? Like he just completely looks out of his mind.
I felt like maybe it was almost like Elmer had some kind of supernatural Dracula pull.
Really?
I don't know. I don't know. But yeah.
The girl who's, I guess, just described as girl in hell or girl in the club hell. She was the one that's also from Frankenhooker. What's her name? Vicky Darnell. Didn't she kind of look like a little bit heavier Rosanna Arquette?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I can totally
as soon as I saw her, I was just like, oh, is that Rosanna Arquette making like a cameo? But the interesting thing, remember like when they leave the dance floor and they are going off to, fool around and they're like waiting by the bathrooms and there's like 3 like punk girls waiting to use the bathroom next.
Yeah.
The one girl, probably the more attractive one, is actually Rick Hurst's wife in real life.
Yes. I heard that in the thing. I thought that was very interesting.
And I'm sure we need to discuss the very infamous scene.
Yeah.
The blowjob scene.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you know more details about it, but apparently the crew threatened to walk off set on that or something to that effect.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a legend. It didn't seem like they really said that on the commentary. Like, I'm sure that some people left, but just like people will walk out of a scene that they're not involved in if they can leave because it's more fun to be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like the actors and Gabe Bartalos and everyone else, they were still involved in this scene in which the girl goes to go down on Brian, and Elmer instead goes into her mouth and eventually eats her brains. And it is genuinely disgusting.
I don't know. I feel like I've seen too much now that I thought it was kind of anodyne. Like just with everything I've seen on Live Leak, it seemed mild.
Yeah, it's not some guy getting hacked to death with a machete and it's like a real thing. But like the way that the brain comes out of like the way it's hanging out of his mouth when he comes back out of her mouth.
Well, listening to Gabe Bartalos describe how they shot that he actually had to, where they used real pieces of calf brain that he had to sew onto the Elmer so it stayed in place because they couldn't use any kind of adhesive that worked. So they actually shoved like all the brain matter into her mouth.
And it's a lot of brain.
There's a lot of
brain. And it's funny because
thinking about it now, I'm gag. I could gag thinking about having that in my mouth.
And Frank in the commentary is like, oh, I sprayed some Banaka in there so she couldn't feel a thing. I'm like, I remember Banaka. That
lasted for a second. Yeah.
I'm gagging thinking about this too. Oh,
I'm one of those people. Like, do you remember Survivor and what was the other show? Fear Factor. I feel like I could have done any of those stunts, any of those challenges, except eating like gross things. And just thinking of having like calf brain in my mouth. It's giving me the heebie-jeebies.
I look like the guy who's forced to eat all the taste at the end of the stuff, the pose he's in. That's what I look like right now. I'm so disgusted. The thing is, I actually don't like disgusting things like this. So me loving brain damage, I'm not really into gore like this.
Mm-hmm. How did they convince Vicky Darnell to do that? I hope I think they said they took her out. She earned her beers that night, but I would hope she earned a bigger paycheck for doing that.
I'm in a cold sweat. What's the other scenes you like?
Well, I mean, that was also when Brian would finally realize that there was a trade-off with Elmer, that that he was murdering people.
He finds blood in his underwear, which
I thought about you.
It's not unlike my story I tell in Frankenhooker, so it's all come full circle.
Yeah, I immediately thought of you. I could picture you in an alley somewhere getting discarding your underwear. All right, so the other scene that I liked a lot was the subway scene.
Yeah, the subway scene was cool. And interesting backstory to this, although contradicted a little bit between some of the participants and the special features.
Yeah, I did notice that with my notes.
But I thought it was really interesting that you could rent this subway and it was only for movies and it would run like
for 90 minutes.
For 90 minutes, yeah. So you had to get it all done in that time.
But they said they had 3 hours to shoot the sequence on the subway. So was that like 2 trips on it? Or was that all the budget allowed?
No, I think it was like 90 minutes one way and then 90 minutes the other way.
I feel like even though 3 hours seems like a lot, I feel like that's nothing when you're filming a film.
I can tell you that it is nothing.
I've seen it. I was on that set with you for like a scene that was like less than a minute, and that took like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's a pain in the ass. Shit, I just dropped a toy.
What toy are you playing with today?
That was my Stephen King Simpsons figure. Probably one of my most hated toys when people come in, but I personally like it.
I feel like the only thing that tops Simpsons as being worse is those pop figures.
Yeah, that's true.
Which the super fan was such a super fan, he had his artist girlfriend make him a Brian Brain Damage pop figure.
Really?
Custom one, yeah. And it looked just like every other pop figure. It looked horrible.
Never mind. I guess he can live because I was going to kill him and steal it, but now I won't have to.
But she did for him as an artist made like a Elmer stocking for Christmas and made him like different like stuffed animals, and those were cool looking.
Wow.
I know. Very cool stuff. Speaking of toys, I randomly went to eBay today and I was looking at the Filmation Ghostbuster toys.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear, if they were like any cheaper than they were, I probably would have bought them for some bizarre reason.
Really?
I just felt the need to waste money. I guess that's my addiction. Instead of being addicted to Elmer, I'm addicted to wasting money.
I could see that.
But I saw like a lot of like the main character and then the gorilla character. Do you remember the gorilla?
Oh yeah, of course.
I don't remember their names. And it was like the flying ship thing. And it was like starting bid was like $40. I'm just like, no, I'm not getting wrapped up in this. If it was a buy it now, that I would consider it. But I feel like I made I'm sure, we both wasted money and our time. And I feel like when you look back like 6-7 hours later, and it's like, I'm so glad I didn't do that.
Oh yeah.
I feel that now. Oh,
well, the subway scene, the cameo by the basket case guy, I guess.
Yeah. I had no idea at first until I watched.
Me either. But I was like, he's got a basket.
I was thinking like, how come they're not revealing what the mystery of the basket was? I was hoping like it was a mogwai or something in there, but then I, found out it was the thing from Basket Case, which I don't really know anything about that film. Do you?
No, but we're gonna do an episode someday.
Were you shocked to see that he wound up killing what's her face, Barbara? I thought it was very foreboding though during that like dream sequence when they're having the threesome with the brother and her,
and he's got like the suction cups and yeah. But I thought it was a cool, tragic ending. It was like he was trying to get away from her. She was still trying to help him. But at that point, he was beyond help.
Yeah. I think one of the last things we need to talk about is the actual ending of the film. I hate that that Frank Henenlotter says that he doesn't know. He doesn't know what it means. And I don't know if he's just saying that but basically what happens is, we never even talked about the Ackermans, but whatever.
Yeah, they were the people who originally had Elmer. And they were kind of an old couple. Just in the first scene, I love when the male Ackerman guy is coming back from picking up the brains, and she's like, "Oh, these look great," and he's like, "No, they're bad. I wish that old guy was still around." And he's like, "This other guy, all he wants to do is like talk to you and tell jokes," and it was just like buying from like a drug dealer who like talks too much. But yeah, so he returns. He's got complete withdrawal. He's completely like, Gabe Bartalos gave him like very like kind of more wrinkles in his face.
He was decomposing.
Yeah, he was decomposing, and he like attacks Brian while Elmer is injecting his goo into him, right?
And
He
basically
squeezes it
him to death. Yeah.
Yeah, squeezes it. So he both squeezes Elmer to death and squeezes all the juice into Brian's head, causing Brian's head to explode in a
Well, he gets
ray
like
of light.
he gets like a huge hemorrhage though.
Yeah.
First he like hemorrhages and he goes back to the apartment, and the hemorrhage reminded me, you know those dog toys, the Kong toys?
Yeah.
It looked like one of those on his head. And basically, I guess at that point he's ODing, and he picked up the gun during the confrontation with the old Ackerman guy. And he pulls, takes out the gun and puts it to his head and pulls the trigger, which basically erupts in light escaping. So, Mike, what do you think happened there? Because I mentioned to you last night what I could be a theory. I don't know, but I thought that like besides ODing, it also took him to like another plane of existence in like a drug world.
I'll buy it.
But I assume he eventually succumbs to that, right?
Yeah.
Like that
I definitely don't think he survived this film.
No.
But I do think that Elmer did. I think that Elmer, he probably like sucked on some rat brains. He probably like worked his way up and he made his way back into the food chain.
He picked up the pieces. Well, remember he did say that the brains that he was being given, which were real brains that they use, was to like subdue him. Like it wasn't enough sustenance. And so like the Ackermans had control of him.
It was a bit like in Interview with a Vampire when Brad Pitt's character is like sucking the blood from rats and stuff like that.
It's a stains and blood. It
doesn't. That's the methadone of vampirism.
The one last thing I guess I just wanted to say was that AMA Reddit thing that I read a while back that made me think of this was a person described in almost like a weekly like journal of talking about his like coming across heroin and trying it to like abusing it to like where it led him, and basically he's described heroin as the first time using it felt like this 8 hour of just constantly orgasming and just like pure euphoria, and then trying to capture that high once again, so like using it like 10 times, like using heroin like 10 times in a week. And then over a course of like a year, by like the end of the year, he describes it, I'm sure I'm butchering this, but that he's like in an institution or in an asylum, that he's all fucked up and addicted to, different medications, and like everything in his life fell apart. And that's what I kind of envisioned what happened to Brian over the course of a 90-minute movie.
Yeah. It's a good sub question. Which dragon are you chasing? I'll tell you which dragon I'm chasing. I, for so long, try to enjoy Tales from the Dark Side like I could when I first watched it, but it just doesn't work anymore.
I feel like that way with either video games when you like the Resident Evil. Which one was the one on GameCube that was really awesome?
4.
Yeah, every once in a while I pick it back up expecting it to be like when we played it, and it's not the same. Although you could say the same thing with like GoldenEye.
Well, that's very true, yeah.
But I feel that way with like certain movies like Cloak and Dagger, which I loved as a kid. And every once in a while I'm just like, oh, I want to watch Cloak and Dagger. It's just going to be so like awesome just to chill and watch it. And it's just like, why am I watching this? And that's the show.
And that's Brain Damage, everybody.
Wait, the one last thing is since the movie so didn't focus on Brian's brother Mike, what was left of him? Like I want a little recap of our little epilogue of what happened to poor old Mike. Like his new girlfriend's dead, his brother's killed himself.
Mike's best hope is to find Elmer and get in on that.
That would be a good Brain Damage too.
We should also, I guess we should have pointed out that Elmer is also Almer.
Almer, yeah, not Elmer.
According to the Ackermans, he's like an ancient creature that went all through history.
Yeah, I think they make a joke about it too, because Brian's like, what kind of name is Elmer? Like Elmer Fudd, but it's not.
And he's like, you called him Elmer? And he's like, not Elmer, Almer.
I also like the title. Like the title of Brain Damage makes so much more sense because it works both ways for the character of Brian and for Almer.
The title was actually, yeah, it's true. The title was controversial because some people were like, you're making fun of people who have mental handicaps.
Oh, really?
And Frank Henenlotter had a great response. He was like, what are you kidding? Every 15-year-old thinks they've got brain damage.
Do you think you have brain damage at 39?
Yeah, probably.
I feel like my memory is going to shit. So
my memory is ridiculous.
Good or bad?
Bad. Horrible. I don't even know what am I doing here. All right.
Thoughts?
Well, last thoughts. I loved this film.
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
I love Frank Henenlotter and wish him the best.
Me too.
And
what's our movie for next week?
I know that we both own The Mutilator.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I got it, but who knows? It could be a Blood Rage, but I just have a bad feeling about it.
I think it's going to be bad and always bad. That's what I'm just saying now. I could be completely wrong, but not even like comically bad. Just like, wow, this is a shit.
Folks, it's time to unsubscribe.
Last thing I'll say to you before we go, you know how we talked about things we watch before we go to sleep at night?
Yeah.
I discovered something I think is very awesome, and it will surprise you. And I recommend you just take a gander at it.
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with Tony Basil's song "Mickey."
Yeah.
Do you remember the video, the famous cheerleading video?
Sure.
Do you not know of anything I'm speaking of?
No.
You don't even know the song? Oh my God, that's great.
Mickey, you're so fine.
Yeah. You don't know the video though, where she's dressed like a cheerleader and she has, the other cheerleaders that
I hate this song.
Oh, the song's not good, but what I discovered was there's like an English version that she did that only aired in England, and it's like much more punk. I mean, the song's the same, but the video's much cooler. And I recommend check it out. The guitarist is like a very punk looking guy with like, the plaid kilt, not plaid kilt, but like a kilt with like, the punk look with the mohawk and everything. And he's like herking and jerking around, and just it's very visually appealing for how simplistic it is. And like the drummer is in like a zoot suit, and he's as lively as can be. He's playing drums all over the place and on Tony Basil.
Wait, and this is you fall asleep to this?
No, but it like calms me down. Like it's my drug before I fall asleep. Like you watch a couple music videos, you watch some fucking Let's Build, and you fall asleep to that.
I previously was falling asleep to Hardcore History or the Revolutions podcast, but I've just discovered this podcast called Martyr Made, which is a very Martyr.
Okay.
Martyr Made, a very intensive history of Israel-Palestine, and I have learned a lot.
That sounds like too much to fall asleep to.
Well, they're not asking you to like fight in the wars.
No, but I mean that's some like heavy duty history you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think you need something a little bit more lighthearted.
No, because I need something that I'm like interested in.
Oh, okay.
But then I just drift off.
See, I'm watching. You don't watch videos, right? To fall asleep to. You need like just audio. See, my big thing right now is there's a YouTuber called Corrales. I don't know if you're going to keep this in, and he does like a lot of those like build games like Minecrafts and I don't know, mining for gold kind of thing. But he's doing this new game called the Y Lands, the letter Y and lands, and it's it's kind of a better Minecraft, and it's so relaxing to fall asleep to. I don't think you would enjoy it, but for me, 5 minutes in, I'm lights out, and then I wake up and like 10 videos later, it's just like how did I have headphones on for 4 hours?
Yeah, it doesn't sound quite as relaxing as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Well, do you have an answer for it all? Did you get any information where you could solve it?
No, but I mean, I thought that I knew a lot, but I knew nothing.
That's actually really interesting. I might actually check that out one day.
But yeah, so that is Brain Damage. And next week on Arches of Horror, we'll be back with The Mutilator.
See ya. Man, one last thing before you go, because I know you want to go. I felt like once you said when I knew you had time constraints there, like it felt like I was rushing through things.
No, I know, me too.
I don't know. I just felt like my brain wasn't working. My brain wasn't working. My brain wasn't working. My brain wasn't working.